Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When ex-lawyer Grayson Moore returns to his Texas ranch, he finds a foreclosure notice nailed to his barn, issued by an HOA he's never heard of. What begins as a paperwork mystery erupts into a battle of forged deeds, corporate greed, and one man's stand for justice on his own land. I was halfway through my second black coffee when I turned off the county road and rolled down the dirt lane that led to my grandfather's ranch. It had rained the night before, so the mud popped under my tires, and the smell of wet mesquite hung in the air like perfume. My boots were still in the back seat, covered in dried manure, and my hands itched to get back to the chores I'd put off for a supply run. Feed, fuel, fencing staples, nothing glamorous, but essential. Life on 600 acres doesn't care if you were once a lawyer. What I didn't expect was the sign. It was nailed right to the side of my barn. Big, bold letters printed on laminate. Foreclosure notice. Property transferred to HOA receivership. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before I killed the engine and stepped out, heart thudding like a gavel on a bench. Foreclosure? HOA? That had to be a mistake. A sick joke maybe. We were miles outside of the nearest subdivision. The closest thing to a homeowners association out here was my neighbor Bob, yelling at deer in his boxers. I yanked the paper down and flipped it over. There was a letter, folded and stapled to the back. Legalese spewed across the page like oil. Delinquent dues. Failure to comply with community assessments. Amount due, $147,000, and the kicker, property now under administrative management by Twin Pines HOA. Twin Pines? I'd never heard of them. I damn sure hadn't signed anything with them. This land had been in my family since the Roosevelt administration. I had the deed framed in my study, right next to Grandpa's Winchester and the faded photo of him standing by the original fence line in 1940. I stood there, letter in hand, staring at my own property like I was a stranger. Somewhere between the absurdity and the cold crawl of dread, I realized something bigger was going on here. And whatever it wasn't just a clerical error, not with language like foreclosure and a number that big. I reached for my phone, punched in the contact number listed in the notice. A robotic voice answered, "Twin Pines HOA. All agents are currently assisting other residents." I didn't leave a message. I wasn't a resident. I was the owner. And someone was about to learn just how bad of a day they were about to have. The next morning started with frost on the fence rails and a low fog curling across the pasture like the land was trying to keep a secret. I was halfway through mucking out the goat shed when I saw the white SUV roll up my driveway like it owned the place. It was one of those shiny models that had never seen a dirt road in its life. Still showroom clean, tires humming softly over gravel. It stopped right by the barn, and out stepped a woman in heels. On a farm. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blazer over a beige turtleneck and had that kind of posture that said she thought she could fire you from your own life. Blonde bob, oversized leather portfolio under one arm, and a pin on her lapel that read, Twin Pines HOA, President. She looked around with the expression of someone inspecting a dog park and not finding enough waste bins. "You must be Mr. Moore," she said, her voice smooth but laced with something sharp. "I'm Karen Temple. I'm here on behalf of Twin Pines HOA to formalize the property transition." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked up to her slowly. "You're here for what now?" Karen opened the portfolio like it was a holy relic and started flipping through color-coded documents. "According to our records, your property falls within the newly adopted Twin Pines Community Overlay. As of the last zoning expansion, this parcel is now subject to our bylaws, dues, and maintenance compliance policies. Unfortunately, you've been delinquent on those dues for over 3 years." She pulled out a map, bright, glossy, and completely fictional. My land was outlined in red with the HOA boundary snaking around it like a noose. I could see they'd added parcels that weren't even remotely connected to their development. The kicker? My house was labeled Lot 47. "This is a mistake," I said. "This land's been in my family since 1934. We've never been part of an HOA. Never signed anything. Never agreed to a damn thing." Karen smiled, the type of smile that belongs on a wolf wearing lipstick. "You'll find that under Section 17 of our administrative code, the HOA has the right to incorporate adjacent properties deemed beneficial to the community's development plan. We sent notice by mail 3 years ago to the address listed on county records." I folded my arms. "Yeah, I bet you did. Funny considering I live here and never saw a thing. And even if you had, you can't just absorb private land without consent. This isn't some medieval land grab. She slid a document toward me, clipped to a laminated backing. This is your signed acknowledgement of inclusion, dated 2020. You'll see the signature at the bottom. I looked. It was my name. Sort of. A twisted, malformed version of my signature, close enough to pass a casual glance, but nothing like what I've used 1,000 times on contracts and court filings. You forged this, I said flatly. Karen didn't flinch. That's a serious accusation. Good, I replied, because I'm a serious man, and you just walked onto my property with a fake map, a forged signature, and a condescending attitude. That's 3 counts of trespass and 1 of fraud in under 5 minutes. You're efficient, I'll give you that. Karen closed her portfolio with a click. Mr. Moore, I came here to offer a peaceful transition. Your refusal to cooperate will only make this process harder for everyone. The land is already listed in the registry as HOA controlled. The foreclosure has been initiated. Get off my property, I said. She didn't move. So I stepped forward until we were nearly toe-to-toe. Now. Karen finally blinked, then gave a tight smile and turned back toward her SUV. You'll be hearing from our legal team. As she drove off, a cloud of dust trailed behind her, but it couldn't match the storm rising in my gut. I wasn't just dealing with bureaucracy. This was deliberate, strategic. They thought I was just another bumpkin with a tractor and a deed. But what they didn't know, what Karen was going to learn the hard way, is that I used to be the guy lawyers called when they were in trouble. And I was about to make her wish she'd stayed in her clean little neighborhood. By noon that same day, I was in town, sitting under the flickering fluorescent lights of the county records office, waiting on a clerk named Brenda to dig through 3 decades worth of zoning maps and parcel data. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, and had the quiet energy of someone who knew where every skeleton was buried and exactly what shelf the bones were filed on. While she clicked through old scans on her aging desktop, I flipped through a copy of my grandfather's deed. I'd brought everything: original title, family transfer records, tax statements going back to the Reagan administration. If my land had somehow gotten annexed into some fake-ass suburban fiefdom, it hadn't happened legally. After about 20 minutes, Brenda turned her monitor toward me. Here's your property, parcel 6113C. According to this, the zoning boundaries haven't changed since 2005. And yet, I said, pulling out the map Karen had shown me, the HOA claims this version was adopted in 2020. She squinted at the glossy paper, then narrowed her eyes. I've never seen this format before. This isn't from the county. Looks like it was generated by a private mapping vendor. My gut tightened. Can you check for any zoning amendments filed around 2020? Anything with the name Twin Pines? She nodded and got to work. A few clicks later, she frowned. There's something weird, she muttered. In March 2020, a revision request was filed, but it's marked as approved without board hearing. That's not normal. Most boundary changes require a full public review and notification process. Who filed it? She pulled up the scan. The name hit me like a slap. Karen Temple, listed as Authorized Planning Representative. Brenda printed the file. It was a copy of the annexation request, stamped and dated, attached to a low-res satellite image. There was a signature at the bottom of the 3rd page, one that was supposed to be mine. I didn't sign this, I said, and I sure as hell didn't approve zoning changes to my own land. Brenda nodded grimly. Then someone's in a whole heap of trouble. I asked her to print everything. The amendment request, the property line maps before and after 2020, and the signature page. As she stapled the documents, she added, "This looks shady. You might want to talk to someone in the legal registrar's office. They'd need to be in on this for a filing to go through without public review." So now I had a forged signature, an unauthorized map, and a direct link to Karen's grubby hands on official documents. But I also had a gut feeling this went deeper than one overreaching HOA president. People don't just sneak changes through the county system unless they've got someone inside helping them. That meant this wasn't just fraud. It was a conspiracy. 2 mornings later, I caught movement out by the northern fence line. Through the rising mist, I saw 2 men in reflective vests walking my property like they owned the damn deed. One of them held a clipboard, the other a laser distance measurer. They were pacing out lengths along my barn, pointing at the machinery shed and making notes like they were appraising it for auction. I walked out, boots crunching on frost-bitten grass, my temper rising with every step. "Can I help you boys with something?" I asked, voice flat. The one with the clipboard didn't even flinch. Routine compliance inspection, he said. Twin Pines HOA authorized. You're listed as Parcel 47 under their jurisdiction. Just verifying boundary integrity and usage compliance. Only thing you're going to verify, I said, is how fast you can get off private property before I call the sheriff. They paused, exchanged glances. The clipboard guy cleared his throat. Sir, any interference with official HOA inspection protocol? I stepped forward, nose to nose. I'm going to stop you right there, pal. This isn't a tennis court in a gated suburb. You're trespassing on a working ranch. There's no HOA jurisdiction here, and you've got 30 seconds to get off my land. They left, but not before Clipboard made a show of slowly tucking his inspection notes into a folder and muttering something about non-compliance documentation. As their truck disappeared down my road, I saw the logo again, Twin Pines HOA, neatly printed on the door. They were organized, emboldened, and they weren't just bluffing anymore. That night, my ranch hand, Juan, told me something that made my jaw tighten. He said 2 guys in suits had approached him the day before, near the feed store in town, offered him work, on-site logistics, demolition prep, whatever the hell that means, for future residential development on more land. Said he should stay close because this place will be flipping hands soon. They were planning something. Not just flexing, but making real moves, treating my land like it was already in escrow. I doubled the locks on every outbuilding, pulled the trail cams off the hunting stands, and relocated them to every gate and perimeter crossing. I rigged the entrances with motion-activated lights and started recording 24/7. I also installed one hell of a mean sign near the front gate. No trespassing. Private property. You're being recorded. Nothing fancy. Just black paint on a rusted sheet of tin. But it got the message across. Then came the kicker. Late that evening, while reviewing camera feeds on my tablet, I got a county alert emailed from the registrar's auto notification system. There'd been a notice of ownership inquiry filed on my parcel. Someone was initiating a title transfer request. I opened the document. The initiating party was Twin Pines HOA. They weren't just circling anymore. They were trying to bite. It was a little after 9 when the black SUV rolled up the drive like it had a goddamn badge. Tinted windows, chrome trim, and 4 guys stepping out like they were auditioning for a low-budget paramilitary show. 2 wore matching windbreakers with Twin Pines compliance unit stitched over the chest. The other 2, bulked up muscles, sunglasses, earpieces like they thought they were guarding a foreign diplomat instead of harassing a rancher in Texas. I was at the tractor shed when they spread out across the yard. One of them, tall, shaved head, sunglasses so black I could see my reflection, stepped up like he was in charge. Grayson Moore, he asked, voice flat. You're standing on his boots, I said. Start talking. He reached into a folder, pulled out a document with a waxy HOA seal and a bunch of aggressive font choices. We're here to serve formal notice of possession. According to HOA Code Enforcement and Municipal Zoning Authority, this property is now under administrative control. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. I stared at the page. It looked official, glossy even. But the wording was vague. The statutes were wrong, and the bottom bore a verified byline signed by, of course, Karen Temple. I don't recognize this authority, I said, folding my arms. And I sure as hell don't recognize you. You're in violation of non-compliance protocols, he replied, like he was reciting from a script. Your continued presence is considered obstruction. Under Twin Pines regulation. This isn't Twin Pines, I cut in. This is my ranch, private property. You're trespassing. You can quote made-up bylaws until you choke on them, but I'm not going anywhere. One of the other men broke off and made his way toward the barn, lifting a roll of red tape. I caught that movement out of the corner of my eye. Hey, I snapped. Back away from that door. He didn't listen. He slapped the tape across the latch and pulled out a large sticker, sealed, Y Enforcement Unit. That was it. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, loud and slow enough for them to hear. Yeah, I'd like to report a trespassing in progress. Armed individuals impersonating legal officers. Property damage may be imminent. That got their attention. The leader raised a hand. Sir, there's no need to escalate. Oh, I'm not escalating. You escalated the moment you taped my barn like it was evidence in a crime scene. He took a step toward me, but then a voice behind us barked, "Back it up." We all turned. A county sheriff's unit had pulled up, lights off, but very much present. The driver stepped out. To my surprise and minor relief, it was Nick Lowry, We played high school baseball together. He looked older now, heavier in the middle, but his voice still carried authority. Grayson, he said, nodding to me. Heard the call. What's going on here? I explained quickly and clearly. Nick turned to the goon squad. Let me see your paperwork. They handed over the glossy sheet. Nick skimmed it, then looked at me. This is weird. No kidding, I said. He handed it back. This document doesn't carry any legal weight here. HOA authority doesn't override deeded ownership. You folks need to vacate this property immediately. The leader looked like he wanted to argue, but after a pause, he signaled to his men. One by one, they climbed back into the SUV. But not before the barn guy gave me a shove as he passed, hard enough to make me stumble back and drop my phone into the dirt. Nick stepped in fast. That's it. You just crossed into assault. He took the man aside while the others revved the engine. After a quick warning, the SUV tore down my drive in a spray of gravel. Nick returned shaking his head. They're not cops, not even licensed security. Just guys playing Rent-A-Thug with a logo. He crouched to hand me my phone. I'm not supposed to say this on record, but something about this whole HOA smells rotten. Keep your cameras rolling and your lawyer close. I'll keep you posted on what I hear. As he left, I looked around my yard. Sealed barn, shaken workers, surveillance lights blinking like nervous eyes. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was invasion. I didn't sleep much after the run-in with Karen's thugs. My barn still had their stupid sticker flapping in the wind like a middle finger, and I kept expecting to hear engines in the middle of the night. I spent most of the next day reviewing trail cam footage and tightening the gate locks. But duct tape and motion lights weren't going to cut it anymore. I needed firepower, legal firepower, so I called in a favor. Elisa Parker wasn't just any investigator, she was a bloodhound in designer boots. We'd worked together back when I still wore a suit and billed in 6-minute increments. Now she ran her own private investigations firm out of Dallas, mostly handling corporate fraud and title theft cases. I laid it out for her in one sentence. An HOA forged documents to claim my land, tried to seize it, and just sent goons to inspect my barn. She arrived 48 hours later, boots dusty before she even got to my front porch. We spent the afternoon going over everything, copies of the fake maps, the acknowledgement form with my fake signature, zoning changes, even the weird interaction with the county recorder's office. Elisa took it all in with the quiet intensity of someone mentally threading wire through a live circuit. That night, she stayed up in the guest room combing through the state licensing board records. Around 1 a.m., I heard her knock on my door. Karen Temple, she said, holding up her laptop, lost her real estate license in 2017. Ethics violations, 3 complaints of falsifying listing documents, and 1 sealed arbitration case involving land misrepresentation. Well, isn't that just precious? I muttered. But wait, she added, flipping her screen around. Guess who filed the zoning expansion for Twin Pines HOA back in 2020? Karen, I said. Not just her. She filed it with Jacob Keating, developer, former land use attorney, and current board member of Twin Pines. He's been pushing residential development along the highway corridor east of your ranch for the last 5 years. It started to click. The map wasn't a mistake. It was part of a larger land consolidation plan. They wanted my acreage, and they didn't want to pay market price. This was never about dues. It was about value. Elisa went deeper. Turns out another Twin Pines board member, Andrew Latimer, owned a construction firm that had recently submitted permit requests for a massive housing tract, projected right where my pastures now sat. We now had motive, means, and fingerprints all over the paperwork. But it got worse. Elisa dug up campaign contributions to a local councilman, the same one who'd signed off on the expedited zoning adjustment without public review. The timing. 3 days before the amendment was stamped. That wasn't just shady, that was bribery in a Sunday suit. By sunrise, I had a corkboard full of printouts, red string, maps, and about 3 dozen sticky notes connecting every greasy name in the scheme. HOA, president, developer, corrupt city official, shady board members. It was all one tight little circle of fraud. And I was the one idiot who still thought land ownership meant something. Well, that was about to change. The lawsuit went out Monday morning, fired like a warning shot straight into the heart of Twin Pines. Justin, my attorney, filed it electronically and followed it with a hand-delivered copy to their little HOA clubhouse, which, judging by the location, was just a rented office suite wedged between a nail salon and a vape shop. The complaint was 43 pages long and loaded for bear, fraudulent misrepresentation, forgery, trespass, unlawful attempt to seize private property, defamation, and malicious abuse of zoning processes. We backed it with notarized deed records, signature analyses, zoning history, video footage, and Elisa's entire spiderweb of connections. By Tuesday morning, we'd gotten our first bite. A reporter from Channel 9 News showed up on my ranch in a beat-up van, camera guy in tow. I guess HOA tries to steal generational farmland, had a bit of a spark to it. I walked them through everything, showed the fake documents, the footage of Karen's goons, the seals still stuck to my barn. I even showed them the map where Twin Pines had drawn their boundary like a drunk toddler with a crayon. The story aired that same evening. They called it the HOA that went too far. The response was immediate. I woke up to 24 voicemails, some from angry locals who'd had their own run-ins with HOA madness. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years offering support. One was from a lady in Florida who claimed her HOA repossessed her mailbox. People were pissed, but the call that mattered most came from the sheriff's department. Apparently, one of Karen's own had decided to squeal. A former board secretary named Trina had quietly resigned 2 weeks earlier. After seeing the news, she walked into the sheriff's office with a flash drive and a conscience. She had emails, a lot of emails, between Karen Keating and the councilman, internal memos discussing quiet acquisition, pre-auction valuations, and references to my land as secured pending litigation delay. The sheriff called me in. I sat in the back corner of the briefing room as he and a deputy investigator walked through Trina's evidence. It was damning. The emails read like a criminal playbook. Manipulate zoning, forge compliance, force foreclosure, buy low, build fast, and pray nobody fights back. Well, someone fought back. By Friday afternoon, an arrest warrant was issued for Andrew Latimer, the construction exec. Turns out he'd funneled money through a fake landscaping contract into the councilman's campaign account. Karen's name was all over the authorization forms. She wasn't in cuffs yet, but she was sweating. Even better, the county announced a full audit of Twin Pines HOA. The pressure was building. You could feel it. The confident facade was cracking, and for the first time, it wasn't me pacing my porch in frustration. It was them, stumbling through damage control while the whole town watched. I went to bed that night with the Channel 9 piece saved on my phone and a calendar full of calls from out-of-state legal reporters. People wanted to hear about the farmer who punched back. But I didn't want fame. I wanted my barn left alone, and I wanted Karen in front of a judge. The courthouse smelled like old paper and older grudges. I hadn't been in one since I walked away from practicing law, but the rhythm came back fast. Creaking pews, bailiff with a face like weathered granite, the quiet clatter of legal pads and whispered strategy behind suited masks. Karen showed up late. She strolled into the courtroom like it was a brunch reservation, draped in white like some cult leader who'd lost her way to the juice bar. Behind her, Jacob Keating, smirking like the smug bastard he was, and a defense attorney I didn't recognize, all silk tie and hollow eyes. She even had the nerve to wave at me like we were neighbors at a block party. We didn't speak. Judge Myers presided, a man with a shaved head, thick-rimmed glasses, and a notorious intolerance for BS. He opened the hearing with a quick review of filings, then turned straight to Karen's attorney. Let's hear the defense. The guy launched into a speech about administrative boundaries, community development goals, cooperative planning agreements, and how Mr. Moore's land falls within a disputed jurisdictional overlay. Myers raised a hand mid-sentence. You'll need to show me the statute, and the deed, and some kind of actual consent. That's when they tried the forged acknowledgement again. Same glossy printout, same shaky signature. I didn't even flinch. Justin leaned forward, calm and professional, and handed over the expert signature analysis, notarized side-by-side comparisons with dozens of my old filings. Elisa had even blown up a high-res scan of the forged version, and when it hit the projection screen, the courtroom went silent. You could practically hear the pixels sweating. Then came the surveillance footage. Karen's enforcer sealing my barn, the shove, the sticker. We played the clip from the trail cam where her voice was caught clearly saying, "He'll fold or we'll take it." Myers sat back and said, "And this was prior to any court ruling." Justin nodded. 10 days before we even filed. Then we got to Trina's emails. That was the killing stroke. Chains of messages, subject lines like rezoning timing strategy, pre-market valuation targets, and the now infamous more property, pre-litigation acquisition plan. Karen's name was all over it. Her replies weren't even cautious. She used phrases like, "just push it through," and "his signature doesn't have to be exact." Keating turned pale. Karen just sat there, jaw clenched so hard you could have cracked walnuts with it. Her lawyer tried a last-ditch objection, inadmissible due to improper sourcing, but Judge Myers just waved him off. "I've seen enough. We'll resume for ruling on damages, but as for the merits of the case, this was a fraudulent action built on forged documents and coercive tactics. The court rejects the claim of jurisdiction by Twin Pines HOA. This property belongs solely and legally to Mr. Moore." The gavel fell like a gunshot. Karen didn't move, not until the judge added, almost casually, "And you may want to stay available, Ms. Temple. There's a criminal investigation underway." She turned to look at me then. No more smirks, just empty calculation like a chess player realizing she'd been playing checkers all along. I met her stare, calm and steady. This wasn't over. But for the first time, I knew exactly where the fight would end. The ruling hit the news before I even pulled out of the courthouse parking lot. Local stations ran the story like it was breaking news, complete with courthouse B-roll and that glorious screenshot of Karen mid-blink, mouth open, frozen forever in legal defeat. I didn't celebrate, at least not yet. I still had a barn to unseal, a ranch to run, and a reputation to untangle from the mess they'd tried to bury me in. But the headlines helped. Judge rules HOA fraudulent in attempted land grab. Farmer wins lawsuit, exposes HOA corruption. My phone blew up with messages from people I didn't even remember meeting. Old clients from my lawyer days. Neighbors who used to treat me like the quiet guy with goats. Even the reporter from Channel 9 sent me a thumbs-up emoji. Justin called that evening. Voice unusually cheerful. "We've got the damages ruling. Total award, $1.5 million. That covers property devaluation, security upgrades, legal costs, and punitive damages for emotional distress." I exhaled hard, finally allowing myself the smallest flicker of a grin. And what about criminal charges? They're moving fast. Sheriff's Office issued warrants this morning for Karen, Keating, and Latimer. Charges include forgery, conspiracy to defraud, unlawful seizure, and attempted grand theft. The councilman's being investigated internally. Translation, he's about to be cut loose. I didn't pop champagne. I poured myself a strong cup of black coffee and walked out to the porch, watching the sun disappear behind the far ridge. The sky bled orange and gold. Somewhere in the barn, the goats bleated like they were demanding justice too. By Friday, the rest of it fell into place like a row of rotten dominoes. Karen was arrested at her home. Apparently, she tried to talk her way out of it until the deputy put her in cuffs. She claimed it was all miscommunication. Keating turned himself in 2 hours later, looking smug as hell in his mugshot. Latimer tried to run, got picked up 2 towns over, sitting in a diner booth like nothing was wrong. The HOA's assets were frozen pending audit. Every homeowner under Twin Pines was notified, and the state's attorney general opened a formal inquiry into how many other properties might have been targeted. I got a certified letter from the registrar's office, officially nullifying the fake zoning overlay. My parcel was relisted as sovereign, privately owned land with no HOA jurisdiction. A week later, I had a locksmith come out, not just to redo the barn locks, but to symbolically erase the fingerprints of their failed little empire. We burned the HOA stickers in a barrel out back. Juan brought beer. Elisa came down from Dallas and made a toast with a plastic solo cup, like a proper Texan. And then there was the sheriff. Nick drove out himself still in uniform and shook my hand like it meant something. "You did the county a favor," he said. "Hell, you did the whole damn state a favor." I nodded, but the truth was simpler. I just didn't like being lied to, especially not with my own name forged on the paperwork. A month after the dust settled, I welded the sign myself. A thick sheet of weathered steel bolted to 2 cedar posts sunk 4 feet into the Texas clay. Big block letters cut by torch and painted with industrial enamel. It stood just past the main gate, where the county road met my gravel lane. Private property. No trespassing. HOA not recognized, not subtle, not polite. But that wasn't the point. It was a line in the dirt, a warning and a promise carved in metal. They'd tried to take what wasn't theirs, and now every passing truck, realtor, and clipboard-waving suburban colonist would know exactly where they stood. I'd barely finished tightening the last bolt when a convoy of pickups rolled in. Neighbors, ranchers, old friends I hadn't seen since my lawyering days. Word had spread that I was hosting something, and no one wanted to miss it. We set up tables along the pasture fence. Juan and his cousins grilled ribs the size of boots. Someone brought a smoker trailer, and it belched hickory sweet heaven for 6 hours. There were kids chasing goats, dogs chasing kids, and somebody's grandpa drinking peach schnapps out of a mason jar like it was holy water. We called it a harvest fair, though there wasn't much to sell. No one came for produce. They came to see the man who kicked an HOA's ass in court and still knew how to stack hay bales. Channel 9 showed up again, this time with a drone. I let them take one aerial shot, just one of the party circling around the barn that once had a foreclosure notice stapled to its wall. Elisa stayed late. We sat on the porch, legs kicked up, boots dirty, sipping good bourbon and laughing at Karen's mugshot, which I'd printed out and pinned to the barn wall next to a taxidermy raccoon. She said it was fitting. I agreed. Justin called during cleanup and told me Harvard Law Review wanted to publish a case summary. Apparently, HOA overreach was hotter than I thought. He asked if I'd be interested in speaking at a real estate ethics conference in Austin. I told him I'd think about it right after I finished pressure washing goat poop off my back deck. Then came the letter. Not from a lawyer, not from a bureaucrat. From an old professor of mine, retired now, who'd seen the case on the news and wanted to congratulate me. Said I'd done something few lawyers ever really get to do. Win a case that mattered, that meant something, outside the courtroom as much as inside it. He called it a defense of fundamental American property rights. I called it Tuesday. In the weeks that followed, I got more calls. Farmers with their own stories, people looking for advice, journalists, podcasters, even a law student who wanted to intern on my ranch as a legal protest against privatized zoning. I told him to bring gloves and not expect Wi-Fi. But the best part? No more strange cars on the drive, no more fake surveys, no more envelopes with HOA seals or glossy violation notices. The cameras still rolled, but now they only caught deer, wind, and the occasional drunk possum. The ranch was quiet again. Not silent. Just right. I started writing late at night. Nothing fancy. Just a draft of an article, maybe a book one day. Something honest. About how land matters. About how you don't need a white collar to understand justice. About how standing your ground sometimes means more than planting crops. And every morning, before the chores, I'd stop at the gate and tap the steel sign with one knuckle, just to remind myself, they don't own me. They never did.